Imagine 5,000 of Rome's finest soldiers marching north into the mists of ancient Britain. These weren't ordinary men. They were the legendary 9th Legion, the Hispana, veterans who had conquered Gaul alongside Julius Caesar and crushed rebellions across the empire. Their eagle standard gleamed in the pale northern sun as they disappeared beyond Hadrian's Wall into the wildlands of Scotland. They were never seen again. No bodies were ever found. No battlefield discovered. No eagle recovered. 5,000 Roman legionnaires, along with their officers, their weapons, and their pride, simply vanished into the highland mists as if the earth had swallowed them whole. For nearly 2,000 years, historians have debated what happened to Rome's lost legion. Was it a massacre, a strategic withdrawal gone wrong, or something far more mysterious? In this video, we'll follow the trail of the 9th Legion from their glory days to their haunting disappearance and explore the theories that still captivate historians today. To understand the mystery, we first need to meet the legend. The Legio Nona Hispana wasn't just any Roman unit. They were elite. Founded around 65 BCE, possibly by Pompey the Great, they earned their name Hispana, fighting in the brutal Spanish campaigns that forged some of Rome's toughest soldiers. When Julius Caesar needed his most reliable troops for the conquest of Gaul, he called upon the 9th. They stood with him at Gergovia in 52 BCE, facing down the fierce Gallic chieftain Vercingetorix. They were there when Caesar crossed the Rubicon, and they fought beside him in the civil wars that would make him dictator of Rome. But Britain would become their true testing ground. In 43 CE, Emperor Claudius launched the invasion that would bring the misty island under Roman rule. The 9th Legion was among the first to set foot on British shores, and they immediately proved their worth. They carved through the resistance of the Celtic tribes, establishing fortress after fortress as they pushed north. By 61 CE, they faced their greatest challenge yet. A warrior queen named Boudica had united the British tribes in a rebellion that threatened to drive Rome back into the sea. Her forces had already burned London and slaughtered 70,000 Romans. The 9th Legion marched south to face her, but this time they met their match. Boudica's warriors caught the legion in a devastating ambush. Entire cohorts were wiped out, and the survivors barely escaped with their lives. It was a humbling defeat, but the 9th would rebuild, recruit, and return stronger than ever. Within a decade, they were back at full strength, ready for their final chapter in the wild north of Britain. The year was 83 CE, and Roman Britain was changing. Emperor Domitian had appointed a new governor, Gnaeus Julius Agricola, a man with ambitious plans to complete the conquest of the entire island. The 9th Legion would spearhead his most daring campaign yet, the invasion of Caledonia, the unconquered lands we now call Scotland. The Caledonians weren't like the tribes the Romans had faced before. These weren't settled farmers who could be beaten in pitched battles and absorbed into the empire. These were Highland warriors who knew every glen, every bog, every mountain pass. They fought like shadows, striking without warning and melting away into landscapes that seemed designed by the gods to swallow armies whole. The Romans built a chain of forts as they advanced, Inchtuthil, Cardian, Stragath, each one a statement of imperial power carved into the hostile wilderness. The 9th Legion garrisoned these outposts, their red cloaks a splash of Mediterranean color against the gray highland sky. For a brief moment, it seemed like Rome might succeed. Agricola won a decisive victory at Mons Graupius in 84 CE, crushing a massive Caledonian army. The province of Britannia stretched from the English Channel to the edges of the known world. But maintaining this northern frontier was proving impossibly expensive, and other parts of the empire were demanding attention. By 87 CE, the recall orders came. Rome was pulling back to a more defensible line, abandoning the highland forts one by one. It should have been a straightforward strategic withdrawal. Instead, it became the beginning of one of history's greatest mysteries. The final confirmed sighting of the 9th Legion comes from an unlikely source: roof tiles. In the ruins of the fortress at York, archaeologists have found tiles stamped with LEGIXHISP, the 9th Legion Hispana. These tiles date to around 108 CE, proving the Legion was still in Britain and still operational well into the 2nd century. But after that, silence. The historian Tacitus, who wrote extensively about Roman Britain and even married Agricola's daughter, never mentions the 9th Legion's fate. Neither do any of the other ancient sources that chronicle the later years of Roman Britain. It's as if 5,000 soldiers simply evaporated from the historical record. What makes this silence even more puzzling is that Roman record-keeping was typically meticulous. Legions were the backbone of imperial power, and their movements, victories, and defeats were carefully documented. When a legion was destroyed, Rome usually made sure everyone knew about it, both to honor the dead and to warn enemies that such victories came at a terrible price. The absence of any official account of the 9th Legion's destruction suggests something unprecedented happened. Either the loss was so catastrophic and embarrassing that Rome chose to erase it from history, or the truth was so uncertain that even the imperial bureaucrats didn't know what to record. By 122 CE, when Emperor Hadrian visited Britain and ordered the construction of his famous wall, there's no mention of the 9th Legion anywhere. The wall itself seems to tell a story. A permanent barrier marking the limits of Roman ambition, built exactly where the 9th had once stood guard. So what happened to Rome's lost legion? Historians have proposed several theories, each more intriguing than the last. The most dramatic explanation is annihilation in battle. Perhaps the 9th Legion marched north for one final campaign against the Caledonians and walked into a trap from which none returned. The Highland clans were masters of guerrilla warfare, and they knew terrain that could turn any march into a nightmare. Imagine the legion strung out along a narrow mountain pass, fog rolling in as painted warriors emerged from every rock and tree. In such terrain, Roman discipline and organization would count for nothing. This theory gains weight from the archaeological record. No major caches of Roman military equipment have ever been found in Scotland that could represent the remains of a defeated legion. If the 9th was destroyed in battle, the Caledonians were remarkably thorough in stripping the dead and disposing of the evidence. But there's another possibility: strategic withdrawal gone wrong. Perhaps the 9th was ordered to evacuate their northern positions, but something went catastrophically wrong during the retreat. Highland weather could turn deadly without warning, and Roman sources describe devastating storms that could scatter armies and sink entire fleets. A withdrawal in winter might have become a frozen death march, with the survivors scattered to the winds. Some historians propose an even more intriguing theory. The 9th Legion was transferred to another part of the empire and met its end far from Britain's shores. Roman legions were frequently moved to trouble spots across the empire, and the early 2nd century saw rebellions in Egypt, conflicts on the German frontier, and the devastating Bar Kokhba revolt in Judea. Perhaps the 9th marched away from Britain only to be destroyed in some distant province, their fate lost in the chaos of imperial warfare. Recent archaeological evidence has added a new wrinkle to the mystery. Excavations in Holland have uncovered tombstones and military equipment belonging to 9th Legion soldiers, dated to the mid-2nd century. This suggests that at least some of the legion survived whatever happened in Britain and continued serving elsewhere in the empire. Modern archaeology continues to search for clues to the 9th Legion's fate. Every Roman site excavated in Scotland and northern England might hold the key to the mystery. Metal detectorists scan Highland fields, hoping to find the legion's lost eagle. Marine archaeologists explore the North Sea, wondering if the 9th attempted an evacuation by sea that ended in shipwreck. The absence of evidence is itself evidence. If the 9th Legion had been destroyed in a major battle, we would expect to find traces: mass graves, scattered weapons, coins dropped in flight. The fact that Scotland has yielded almost no such finds suggests either that the battle happened in a location we haven't yet discovered, or that the legion's fate was something other than a simple military disaster. DNA analysis of ancient remains found in Britain might eventually provide answers. If researchers can identify soldiers with genetic markers typical of Roman recruitment areas, they might be able to trace the movement and ultimate fate of legion personnel. Meanwhile, climate scientists are reconstructing the weather patterns of 2nd century Britain. If the 9th Legion disappeared during a particularly harsh winter or extreme weather event, paleoclimatic data might provide crucial context for understanding how environmental factors contributed to the mystery. The disappearance of the 9th Legion has captivated imaginations for centuries, inspiring countless novels, films, and historical investigations. Rosemary Sutcliffe's The Eagle of the Ninth introduced millions of readers to the mystery, while recent films like The Eagle and Centurion have brought the story to new audiences. But beyond entertainment, the 9th Legion's fate illuminates something profound about the limits of imperial power. Rome seemed unstoppable, its legions invincible, its reach unlimited. Yet here was proof that even the mightiest empire could lose an entire army without explanation. The Highland mists had swallowed Roman eagles just as they would later claim English armies and Scottish clans. The mystery also highlights the importance of written records in preserving history. Without Tacitus, Dio Cassius, and other ancient historians, we would know almost nothing about Roman Britain. The silence surrounding the 9th Legion reminds us how easily entire chapters of human experience can slip into oblivion. Standing today on Hadrian's Wall, looking north into the Scottish Highlands, it's easy to imagine those final moments. Roman sentries scanning the horizon for threats they couldn't yet see. Orders arriving from distant emperors who didn't understand the realities of frontier warfare. And somewhere in the mist-shrouded glens beyond, 5,000 of Rome's finest soldiers marching toward a fate that history cannot explain. The 9th Legion's disappearance remains one of archaeology's greatest unsolved mysteries. Were they massacred by Highland warriors, lost to winter storms, transferred to another province, and destroyed in some forgotten battle? Or did something even stranger occur in those wild northern lands? Perhaps that's the most Roman thing about their story. Not the glory of their victories or the mystery of their disappearance, but the stubborn refusal to yield their secrets to time itself. 2,000 years later, the 9th Legion still guards their final secret, as silent and steadfast as they were in life. The Highland mists keep their own counsel, and the eagles of Rome remain forever lost in the Celtic twilight.